this is a point I really like to start coming in with some details. So I'm going to come in with some marks like little dots in the buildings to kind of mimic the look of the rooftops and the windows. And I would take my color and kind of create some more detail within the ocean, build up the layers of it within these dunes to create these shadows to make them a little bit more dramatic than from the photograph. So, taking just a really thin paintbrush and adding these marks and details at this point. I think the biggest takeaway I would love for you to take from this lesson and thinking of landscapes is one, practice like anything, but then you'll really start to know what you like to create. You'll start to explore different mediums that you like, but when practicing, really really think about your perspective, so your horizon line, and don't be afraid to be dramatic on that, putting it really high or really low instead of slap dab in the middle, and then breaking that down into thirds. So, your sky up top, your middle line, and then your bottom, but make sure that you can easily bring your horizon line really, really low, and then your sky is very large. And then really draw out the images, which can really help map out things. And then pay attention and establish those darks and lights. And then lastly, really pay attention to the angles to create movement in your pieces. Now, I went in this photograph, there's some vegetation in the background since it's on a hillside. So I put that in the middle one, and then I'm adding this same green into the ocean. Oceans, it's not just blue, so there's lots of greens in them sometimes. Sometimes you have the reflection of the sun, so that brings out a lot of the orange and yellow colors. So, really pay attention to the way the sun is hitting the ocean, and then also what's around it and how that is reflecting onto the ocean. So if there's a big building, the colors from that building might be reflected onto the ocean as well. Or if the ocean is by a mountain, start looking at that. And then if it's at sunset or sunrise, your ocean will look entirely different as well. Now, by the coastal area, there's going to be a lot more white as well because the waves are kind of crashing up against those areas. So that's where it's going to be much lighter right there by the shores, or in this picture, kind of by like the bridge where the on top of the bridge is like a hillside of buildings. So make sure to bring in some of those light colors in those areas. Come in with some other mediums. I have here my Willow charcoal, and I'm going to come in with that in Stabillo and add some of these details. So since this city is so detailed. I can't possibly do every window. I mean, I could, but I want to keep it a little more abstract. So I'm going to use dots and marks and angled lines in order to create kind of the illusion of these windows and of these rooftop lines. So it's defining. I came in with my square brush to create these buildings, and now I'm kind of containing my marks and separating the buildings a little bit more with my Willow charcoal and my burnt sienna Stabillo. Now I think I'm going to keep the top one just painted because I really like that look. And then the bottom seascape, I'm going to come in as well with the Stabillo, with some charcoal, and just add a little bit more texture. And I think at the very end, I'll come in with some soft pastels for another layer, another dynamic. Here is my white charcoal by Generals, and it's just a pencil, which is really nice to add these fine details. And again, just another medium to add a little bit more depth. And, you can see here I'm going vertical, going horizontal, going at an angle, trying to create these rooftop and these little window marks. Now, the other thing to keep in mind when you're doing landscapes, you can really be realistic with your color palette. Or, like my top one, make that pink sky, or, add a purple sky. I mean, it does not have to be realistic if you don't want it to be. The other great thing you can do is combine different photographs. So let's say I'm looking at the sky in, my dune photo, it's very white. And again, I came in with a pink sky. Or I could come in with different clouds I want, or if the sky is really blue and I wanted it to be really moody, I could make it dark. So make those artistic decisions as you move along, and don't feel like you have to follow the photograph precisely. Even if I have a source photo, I like to take my own artistic approach. The bottom photograph, I originally took out the bridge because I felt like it was just blocking the scene. And I originally had kept the boats in the foreground. But as I was continuing to move on, I realized that I really didn't, I thought they were kind of distracting, and I wanted that ocean to be much more vast looking. So I removed them. So think of those things, take your own artistic approach with your colors, with the layout, and just go with it. Now, I'm looking at this foliage that I put behind the city, and I find it very distracting. And I think it's because this city is very busy. And then there's not any green anywhere else. So what I could do is either bring in the green into the cityscape or just paint it out, which is what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to kind of make this sky scene a little bit more blended so that it's not as distracting from the city. And I really like that this one is just the blues and the browns. And I think the green to me was just a distraction. So play with it. You can easily paint over elements or create a new one and do the same scene again. So, I make these changes quite often as I'm painting. I think people get so nervous. Should I put it in? Should I not? And sometimes you just need to do it and then see if you like it or not. And you can always paint over it. So I'm already liking it better being this whole blue. I'm either going to add in some clouds or kind of a sky scene. So my original photograph does not have any clouds, but my seascape photograph above does. So maybe I'll come in and kind of mimic the look of those clouds from the seascape. So coming into clouds, look at them closely. But if you're looking at like a cumulus cloud, generally the light hits the top of the cloud. So it's going to be much whiter and brighter up at top. And then as you go below is where you're going to see more of the shadowing. So study clouds, look at photographs, look into the sky and look at them as far as their shapes. And there's obviously a variety of clouds. And then look at the way the light hits them. Take some photos on your phone, then those can be your own reference that you add into photographs. But I love the fact that you can just change it how you want as you move along. So that's really where, everyone's looking for their style. That's where your style comes in when you make these decisions based on just what feels right as you're painting. So you can see the tops of the clouds are much more white. I'm kind of rolling the brush around and dabbing it to create this, really fluffy cloud or cumulus cloud look. And I still might feel like this is too distracting from the buildings, in which case I'll just kind of go over it in a wash. Now, when you are painting skies, another thing to think about is they're always kind of a gradient. So you kind of go from darker blue up top to lighter. The gradient goes down, so there's more white as you get closer to the horizon line. Now, this is going to change if it's sunrise or sunset, but look at that as well as you're creating your skies. Came in with more detail. I'm bringing a little bit of this warmth into the side of the seascape, and then I'm going to bring a little bit of it into the seascape as well. And these are just the final touches, just adding a little bit of depth, a little bit of texture. I wanted this ocean to really, feel like it looks like a lot of waves coming in and movement. And knowing that this is a windy city, I would imagine there is quite a bit of, waves and breeze that are creating these white areas crashing against the rocks. So I want that to shine through here. But coming again with my Stabillo and just making even more movement with different mediums, which I think is really great. And I'm looking at this middle painting and I still feel like it's busy. So I think I will probably paint over it again, but I'm going to take off the artist tape because it kind of completes it and kind of see how they are and see what I want to add to them once the tape is removed. Because sometimes it looks completed at this stage and other times, you feel like you're missing a little something still. But these minis are beautiful. They're great ways to, gifts for people. You can hang them up in small bathrooms, but they're wonderful. But I am going to come in with a little bit of white. I want to just, I want this to not even have clouds at this point. I want it lighter. I want the city to really stand out from the sky, as just kind of a more minimal backdrop, which I love. And there's a time and place to put the clouds in. So sometimes it's just experimenting, having the foliage and then removing it. But you can see I am putting a lighter color right against those buildings, one to make them pop, but that is, as you move further down in the sky, it is a little bit lighter. So sit on it for a couple days. There might be some finishing touches that you add as you take the tape off, and you can keep adding. Now, if you do get some paint on the side, you can easily go over it with white gesso to create those clean frames. And I love this top one. I think it's my favorite, and it might be a piece that I turn into something larger because it has a very natural look to it and maybe a little bit more mountainous than it does the sand dunes or the Sahara Desert, but I like it. I like that it is more contrasted than the photograph. So play, find places that inspire you for your mini landscapes. You do not have to use what I did as far as your resources or your sources for your photographs, but play with it and really start. It's a great way to start exploring the lands and landscape and architecture of Morocco. And at a certain point, you just have to stop. You can see I keep adding detail and detail and detail. And it's hard. It's hard to stop. It seems like the more detail you add, the better.